Rebuild of the favorites. We here for the latest. South side or the north side. Not tuned to the greatest. Home team for the home teams. Both sides got our own rings. On the mound or the long ball. But we don't put the wrong strings. Yeah. It's that time of the year now. Wrigley or guarantees for the whole league that we hear now. New show with a new mood. Discussions and interviews. Trade rumors that might be. This is Pinwheels and Ivy.
Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. My name is Mitchell Kaminski, bringing you White Sox talk every Wednesday in the 12 o'clock hour. We got on the Dog Squad shirt, baby. You know why? Because much like Cam Boozer, we came from the same place, the Chicago Dogs from Rosemont. And Cam Boozer, eventful week this week, gave up a grand slam after Davis Martin pitched one of the best games of the season for the White Sox, for his season, I should say. Goes deep as he ever has in his career, makes it into the eighth inning. He gets an out, allows first runner on. So they bring in Cam Boozer. He inherits a runner at first base. He proceeds to walk a guy, give up a single. Bases are loaded now, tight spot. You know, the White Sox only trailing by one run, so this game's still within reach. Julio Rodriguez comes up in a big spot. First pitch, he sees Boozer hung a cutter over the heart of the plate. That got launched into left field bleachers, blew the game wide open. The rest is history. But you know what? I really like and we're going to talk about the bullpen in a second, because the bullpen has really struggled, and I think that's one of the reasons they chose to bring in Adrian Hauser. We'll get to that in a second as well. But I like what Will Venable did. Look, they don't have a ton of bullets in this bullpen, right? Like, they're outgunned in most of these matchups. The only three, and we've talked about this before, the only three guys I really think you can put in these high leverage situations, and none of them are particularly trustworthy, but Mike Vassell I trust. Steven Wilson I trust. I know he blew the save against Cincinnati, but like, I do still think if you look at his numbers, he's one of the guys that you're going to want to lean to in these high leverage situations. And Boozer's another one. And I know the numbers don't reflect it, but left-hander, I think the stuff is there. He's had a couple bad outings, but those are the three guys I think you can really trust in these high leverage situations. Jordan Leisure's another one, but even Leisure, he makes me nervous. But Will Venable, I think, did a really nice job. Knowing that, hey, these are the guys you're probably going to be going to in these situations. After a horrible game, he gives them another opportunity today, last night. And basically a similar situation. Hauser is pitching a great game. Bullpen, they got a 1-0 lead this time. So they bring in Boozer, high leverage situation in the eighth inning. Gets into a bit of trouble again. Bases are loaded. Who comes back up to the plate? Julio Rodriguez. Boozer gets ahead of him 0-2. And actually, he kind of left a similar cutter over the heart of the plate there. That was kind of threw him the same pitch, a little bit further outside of the strike zone. But that got popped out to center field. But that's what you want to do. You give the guy a chance after, because you don't want that. What you don't want as an athlete, and I've never been a professional athlete, obviously. That's why I'm sitting here like a jackass. But, even if I playing it, if you have a bad game, you don't want to be sitting on it and reflect. You kind of want to get back out there and wipe the slate clean. Because you can do better, right? You don't want that to be lingering in your memory. And so not only did Will Venable bring him back out this next day to try and wipe that slate clean, he put him another high leverage situation against the heart of the Mariners order, had him basically face the same guy, didn't pull him when the bases got loaded after giving up that grand slam the night before, and allowed him the chance to redeem himself. So good for Boozer for bouncing back. Good for Venable, too, for instilling some confidence, and good on the rest of the bullpen, man. I think those guys, that was a really gritty win last night. 1-0 game. They get that run by Chase Mydroff, who, that guy's a dog. I love the way he plays baseball. He's on a 7-game hitting streak right now. He's not even fast. If you look at his Baseball Savant page and his speed numbers, he's not a very fast guy, but yet he still already has 7 stolen bases. He gets on base. It's like the old school, get him on, get him over, drive him in. He gets on first, steals second. Palacios gets a base hit. He starts his way home. His helmet's always flying off. He's got the flow. He's just got that look. He's like the gritty player. Doesn't hit for a ton of power, but he did hit a home run against the Cubs. But, I really like the way he plays the game. And he's playing some solid defense at short. I know initially some scouts were saying the arm strength is going to be concerned. I really haven't seen it. I think he's played a very good shortstop so far, at least serviceable to this point. So I'm really happy with what we're seeing from Chase Mydroff. But that's a gritty win last night. You get the one run, the bullpen holds down the fort, keeps quality start intact for Adrian Hauser. So that was good to see. But this bullpen's been pretty bad. I do want to get into the bullpen woes, and I think that's one of the reasons that they brought in Hauser because they needed some more guys to eat innings. That's why they were kind of doing this opener role, but I don't think that was sustainable long-term. And, we have been getting some better performances out of Jonathan Cannon's looked really good in the last couple of weeks. Like he kind of looks like a serviceable major league starter. We've talked about him, but like the big thing with Cannon is he's not walking guys nearly as much anymore. Guys still hit the ball hard off of him and he gives up hits, but he's keeping it around the strike zone. He's making his defense make plays, and he's making big pitches when he has to. So I've been really, really happy with Cannon's performances the last couple games. He had a stretch of 5 straight games where he'd gone 6+ innings. That got broken his last start against the Cubs, but he still threw 5 innings of pretty good ball. He looked pretty good. But look at this White Sox bullpen. They got entering last night's game, they had a 4.73 ERA. So that's the 6th highest in the MLB. Not great. The relievers had combined for a league worst 15 losses and just 3 saves. And that's only 3 fewer than the next closest team. So not particularly, great. Now, Hauser they brought in primarily a starter. He's got out of his 152 appearances, only 48 have come from the bullpen. So he's more of a depth piece. I think that he's kind of replacing Bryce Wilson because Bryce Wilson has been pretty rough since entering the rotation. And that was one of those, I thought, hey, let's give this guy a shot. They've given him a shot, and it hasn't really worked out. So Hauser's kind of like a bargain brand Bryce Wilson, if you will. But one thing he does really well, because if you look at his overall numbers, like last season with the New York Mets, 5.84 ERA. And not great. Opponents hit 272 against him. He had the second lowest strikeout rate of his career at 14%. So it's like, in the minor leagues also, he had an ERA north of 5. But there's 2 things to like about him in the minor leagues. He had a pretty solid 22.8% strikeout rate in AAA. And now, mind you, these AAA numbers are usually a little bit higher with the ERA-wise. He also has ground ball rate, 57% ground ball rate in AAA. It's been the story of Hauser's career. So I think with the White Sox, hitter-friendly park, you want a guy that can keep the ball on the ground. There's one thing that Hauser does well. It is keep the ball on the ground. He owns a ground ball rate of 51.7 across his 8 MLB seasons. So he also had one time he nearly got into 60% during the 2020 season. So, if they're still hitting hard grounders, it's still going to be a hit, but at least that's going to help him keep the ball in the ballpark and at least give his defense a chance. I know I think last night was a little bit of fool's gold just from the fact, and he threw the ball well. The weather wasn't very good, not very good hitting conditions. It's a Mariners lineup that didn't have a whole lot of time to scout for him because they literally signed him like off the street and just threw him out there. But I think that move is kind of helping. We can't have these games where the starter's going, 4 or 5 innings. Like Bryce Wilson the other day was against Cincinnati. Hey, he gives up 7 runs, right? But they're like, hey, look, bullpen spread out. We just had an extra inning game 2 nights ago. Like, you got to wear it, buddy. But, you don't want to have that happen all the time either because it's like, hey, we just threw away a game because we have to keep trotting Bryce Wilson out there to keep, throwing innings. Now, I'll give him credit for eating those innings, as many as he could, but, it's one of those things. We need a more reliable starter at the fit back end of the bullpen. It's a young rotation. We can have these hiccups once in a while, but with the state of the bullpen right now and not having many weapons, we need some innings eaters. So I think that's why they brought in Hauser. We'll see how long it lasts. It might be a little bit of him and Wilson might interchange. You might see him as sometimes the long reliever, but good first start last night. So that was encouraging to see. Let's get in that White Sox Cubs series really quick. Man, I'll tell you what. So entering last night's game against the Mariners, which they might not have played, and I want to make sure I get this right. And I've been talking a lot about this year. It's like, hey, this White Sox team, they look a lot better. Now, the record might not show it. So they won last night, so they are now sitting at 15-34. Had they have lost last night, it would have been the worst 49-game start in franchise history. Last year, the team also started 15-34. So they have identical records at this point in the season. They might be saying, well, hey, is it really that much better? They have literally the exact same record. And I would argue, yes. Number one, if you watched all these games, which I have, unfortunately, subjected myself all of them last year, which was miserable. Or most of them anyway. I ain't gonna lie. Near August, we were starting to just start watching the 8-minute recaps. We couldn't bear to watch these anymore. But we hung in there for a while. But this year, they keep these games a lot closer. That's number one. They're playing a cleaner brand of baseball overall. They just don't got the weapon. And they're not hitting as well as they should be, but they're staying competitive in a lot of these games. Where last year, a game would get away from them early and it would be over. Now you're seeing them hang tough. Even that game they lost 5-1 against the Mariners the other night, that 9th inning, they got the tying run to the plate. they're scrappy. They're a scrappy bunch. And I don't think Will Venable is, he's made some mistakes in his first year as a manager. I do not think he's perfect. There's been a lot of lineup decisions, a little questionable, but it's a clear upgrade from Pedro, right? I mean, you heard Ozzie Guillen talking about it the other day. It's a clear upgrade from Pedro. You see it. The guys play harder for him. They play overall a cleaner brand of baseball, and they're keeping these games more competitive. There is progress. I mean, look at Miguel Vargas, who we're going to talk about in a second. You're seeing strides there. Shane Smith, excellent development. So if you can't see the positives in this team, you're not really watching. If you can't see the progress this team has made, you haven't really been watching from this year compared to last year. That's what made that Cubs series so frustrating, because that was the first time this year that looked like the 2024 White Sox. Now, the Cubs are a very good team. That lineup is awesome. It is so deep. P. Crow Armstrong should be an MVP candidate. And that man is doing it all out there. And you just look at his offensive numbers, and that would put him near the top of the NL in most categories. But then you see what he does on defense. Now, I know he dropped that one fly ball, and then he shoved it right back in Sox fans' faces because we had a fun time mocking him on social media, and then he proceeds to hit a three-run bomb off our best starter. And that dude's a real good team, obviously. The White Sox were in all those games. The score might not reflect it, but like there was a couple winnable games on the table there that they just pissed away. They got outscored 26-8 throughout that series. Goes back to the bad bullpen. Bullpen couldn't hold down the fort. Sean Burke in that second game, walking a lot of guys, a lot of self-inflicted errors. The first game, poor Shane Smith, he gives up, 7 runs? Only one of them's earned. His own catcher can't catch the ball. We got to play, and it was just like, this is a very 2024 White Sox move. We get the bases are loaded here. There's a chopper to Andrew Vaughn. And he's got a couple options here. He can take the free out at first base, but because his momentum is bringing him in, he decides to throw home. The throw doesn't beat him. So now everyone's safe, opening the door for a big inning. And that's exactly what happened. With one out there, you step on the bag, you get 2 out, you're going to minimize the damage. But because he did not do that, the very next play, we get a ground ball to short. My draw throws it home. Got to try and prevent the run. And the throw beats him. We drop it. Very 2024 White Sox. That was what was so frustrating about that series. But outside of that, overall this year, there's been a lot of progress. And you see a lot of guys that are foundational pieces now coming up. Like my draft I just talked about. He's been fun to watch. Miguel Vargas also. Awesome series against the Cubs. Awesome series. He just got rewarded with AL Player of the Week. I'm going to get into his numbers there for a second. But there was one moment in particular that I really was proud of Miguel Vargas for. Because this Cubs-Sox rivalry's lost a little bit of juice, right? The last time it was truly, for me anyway, where it was and there's been some good moments since then. Whiskers Morel, if you watch the, Brett Morel, the walk-off grand slam, that was pretty cool. Luis Robert shushing the crowd, so there's been some moments, but it's kind of lost a little bit of juice. 2020 or 2019, I believe it was. That was the last time where it was okay, the Cubs are still in first place. They're still a contender, and the White Sox are ascending where it feels hey, we finally got 2 good baseball teams that can finally go at it. And now it's still, just 2 ships passing the night. Cubs are still good. White Sox not so good. It's not as fun. But so Miguel Vargas provided a really good moment in this rivalry, I think, and that's what you want to see. And I loved it, especially because he was been killing them all series. But there's a moment in that third and final game. So earlier in the game, Miguel Vargas. Now, mind you, he'd already hit a home run, and that was his, I believe, 5th homer of the series. He had 2 that first game. I think it was 3rd homer of the series. I'll pull up the numbers in a second. But he's on third base. And there's a fly ball, or he's playing third base, I should say, and there's a fly ball hit to the outfield. And runner at third, I believe it's Pete Crow Armstrong. And Vargas, he's looking to see where the ball is so he can tag up. And Vargas is kind of screening him like a little, like a hockey goalie, almost, kind of blocking his view. The Cubs didn't like that. The third base coach starts, he said something to him, you can see. And Darren Jackson noticed it on the radio. And so you come back, and Brad Keller, former White Sox later, he plunks him. Hits him with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball or 96-mile-an-hour fastball. Either way, it probably hurt. Doesn't feel good. Now, Vargas is saying, hey, I've been killing you all series. I just heard you chirping at me, over there. And then Brad Keller, after the inning, he's walking off the mound with this smirk on his face. I do believe, and I know Keller said it wasn't intentional, and Will Venable's I don't think it was intentional either. I think that was intentional. I think Brad Keller knew exactly what he was doing. That's exactly the type of Brad Keller move that he would do. We saw what he did with Tim Anderson. He's very thin-skinned. Sharman soft. That whole Cubs team soft. Dansby Swanson taking a... Look, what was that flop at second base? Give me a break. I mean, terrible acting on that one. But, thin skinned Cubs, like per usual, they're a little offended that Vargas was screening the guy at third. I think Keller hit him intentionally. I'm glad Vargas said something. It provided a little juice to the rivalry. So good for him, man. Good for him standing up for himself. He started to find a little confidence too. It's also pretty funny. Media asks him a lot of these, questions. Like you ask him about last year. He's like, I don't remember anything about last year. They ask him about the Keller dust up. He's like, I was asking him my favorite restaurant. I kind of like that as well. It certainly helps that he's playing well too. But so let's look at these numbers. And this is what the big reason winning AL Player of the Week. Now, mind you, he was the worst player in baseball like the last 2 months of the season last year. So this is a pretty big turnaround. And a lot was made about him adding the 20 pounds of muscle and making the hand change. But it looks like it's all starting to click. Because even Will Venable said, this is the fastest I've seen someone making a minor tweak in season that's had this big of an impact. So between May 13th and May 18th, Vargas hit .413, the .423 on base percentage. He had 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, and that was across 6 games. So he had a clutch 3-run homer against the Reds in extra innings, first game of that Cincinnati series, 2 homers in the series opener at Wrigley Field, and then he had that home run in the series finale against the Cubs. That first game of the series, too, he was a triple shy of the cycle. So it's been really good. Since making that hand adjustment, since August 24th, he entered the season hitting .245, which was, respectable, 749 OPS on top of that. Since making that hand change right around April 24th, since April 24th, I should say, which is right after he changed the stance, he's hitting .296 with a 1,019 OPS, 12 RBIs in the last 15 games. So he's on a heater. On top of that, he's playing some really good defense in the hot corner. Keeps this up. I don't want to overact or be prisoner of the moment, right? Because, it's a long baseball season. I was, pressed the panic button, Jonathan Cannon, and Jonathan Cannon looks just fine. The Minnesota Twins, for example, they looked like ass to start the season. Now they're on a heater. They look like they could contend for that division against the Tigers. So, it's a grind. You don't want to overact week to week. If Vargas can keep this up, it's been a pretty sustained. We've had a pretty large sample size now. This guy could be everything we wanted Yohan Moncada to be. Plays good defense. He's starting to get some power. He's hitting for a little bit of average, too. It looks like the complete package, man. I'm very happy for Vargas. One guy I'm not as happy for is Luis Robert Jr., and he had some pretty candid remarks this week. And look, let's be honest, he's been struggling. I think there's been some value in him because he's still playing good defense. He's stealing some bases, but now strikeouts are starting to rise a little bit. The average still hasn't gone up. And the weather's still – the White Sox have had – the weather's been a big thing. We keep mentioning the weather. And it sounds like we're making excuses for the guy. And you know what? Maybe I am. Let's be honest. But the White Sox have had the coldest average starting temperature in the major leagues this year for their home games. So, the weather has not been great for him. And I do think that is part of it. But he hasn't played up to his superstar potential. It does not look like, he does not look like this 5-tool all-star that we've seen occasional flashes of in the past. And so the media asked him, hey, what are your thoughts? Trade deadline coming up. And essentially he was like, hey, honestly, the way I'm playing, I don't think anyone would even want to take a chance on me. And I respect the honesty. It's true. It's true. I do. So I think he's right in a sense. I do think teams would take a flyer on him just because you see Gavin Sheets, for example, goes to another organization. And he looks a lot better. And he said, look, when I was playing with the White Sox, there's times I thought about quitting. And so there's given there's some of these past teams, I'm not saying this current iteration of the team, it was some pretty toxic clubhouses. It wasn't a very good environment. You could tell after Tony left, things kind of unraveled. Even with Tony, there was cracks, right? There's cracks in the armor. It didn't sound like a very good development to be either developed as a young player or just playing in general. It did not sound like a good vibe. And I think Robert's been here so long, a change of scenery, given his talent, I think would do him very well. And I think other teams see that because these teams aren't making trades. They're not like us where they're just looking at the box score and they see, oh, he's hitting 180. Oh, we're not going to trade for him. I think, they know around the league what the guy can do. Now, they'll use those numbers as leverage to rip the White Sox off. I think where Robert would be correct is the White Sox can't get anything of value in return for me. We might get half a jar of mustard pickles at this point, but you're not going to get anything of value. Top 100 prospect, you would have thought a few months ago, it'd be crazy to not get at least one top 100 prospect for Luis Robert Jr. Right now, I'd be happy if we got one. Does he look worth a top 100 prospect? No. For a guy with an injury history who does not hitting for any power. Now, there's tools, and I do think a team in contention could see the value in a guy like that and want to take a flyer on him, but not for a big asking price. And so if Chris Getz wants to hold on to him until he gets his price, Robert's going to have to start playing better. So How we doing, Mr. Ross? He goes, hi, at least the White Sox are better than my depressing Rockies. Yeah, that is, see, the Rockies aren't even, like, the White Sox are bad, but they're at least fun bad, in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of people, the Rockies are just bad. Like, they're boring and bad. There's not even, like, a good combo. I almost feel sorry for them. It's, that White Sox record, losing 141 games might be short-lived, because Rockies are coming for it, which is tough to see. But yeah, with Robert, like, we're going to have to see something in a couple months and quickly if you want to get anything of value in return for Luis Robert Jr. Final thing I want to talk about here, the White Sox are going to have some tough roster decisions to make in the next couple of weeks. So they just called up Tim Elko. And Elko, he's had a couple homers, still striking out a lot, sitting around like 150. The defense has been pretty solid. It's still too small of a sample size. And so we just got Austin Slater back, which is nice. We're about to get Andrew Benintendi just started his rehab assignment, so he's about to come back up too. And then we're going to have Mike Tauchman back in the coming days. So with Benintendi, Slater, and Tauchman, this lineup automatically it becomes a lot better, right? You're going to get some more veterans in the mix. I think the offense, you're going to see some more wins here. And this is why I'm going back to, like, this team is better than last year's team, and I don't believe they're going to finish remotely near the same record, because that 2024 team last year, around this time last year, the vibes were actually still pretty high. I remember coming up before a game, I believe it was against Tampa Bay. They won 2 or 3 of that series. They're playing some pretty good baseball right around this time. And then they rattled off a 10-plus game losing streak. And then later they rattled off another, like, 10-plus game losing streak. And then, like, I think it was a 19-game losing streak. Like, they had 3 of the longest losing streaks in baseball. I don't see that happening with this team. I think there's more depth where the bottom is not going to completely fall out like last year. I don't see a long losing streak like that happening. Now, you'll have some bad stretches where they're going to get swept, like you saw against the Cubs, but they rebounded nicely. They picked up a game against the Mariners. So I think this team they can still win 60 games. Call me crazy. I think they can still win 60. At least, at the very minimum, they're going to win over 50. I still think. So we'll see there. But with these guys getting called up, there's going to be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made. For Corey Lee, also, I didn't even mention, he's going to be coming back up. I think with Corey Lee, he's got an option left. I think they keep him in Charlotte until they can try and trade Matt Thaiss. Even if they don't trade Thaiss, I think he still has some value. As bad as he was in that Cubs series, he plays good defense. He throws a lot of guys out, which has been a struggle for the White Sox in past years. And a lot of that's been on the pitchers just not holding runners on. But for whatever reason, these teams were running roughshot all of the White Sox. Our catchers can't throw anyone out. Well, now all of a sudden, like, they look pretty, like, Carroll throwing guys out. Thaiss has been throwing guys out. I think he manages that young pitching staff really well. And he hasn't been hitting all that great, but he does get on base. He's drawn a lot of walks. So there's a lot of value in Thaiss where for one season, you can afford to keep Lee in AAA. If there's an injury or something, you call him back up. But Carroll, I still think he's been doing everything you've been asking of him. I think there's going to be a down period with him, but, like, you just got to stick with it. He's done everything he needs to do in AAA. Just let him finish out the season. I think they're doing a good balance of, not overloading him with stuff like play. So I think Lee stays in AAA Charlotte is my guess, because carrying 3 catchers wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, especially with all the DH options you have. Palacios, I think, probably gets DFA'd too. I don't see any way to keep him on, especially with Benintendi coming back as an outfielder. So I don't see, I think he's probably gone as well. Capra, who they just picked up, he hasn't really played at all, which was an odd pickup in general. I would imagine he gets the boot as well when one of them comes back. But you still have the question with Elko and Vaughn, who does one of them go? I think it would be dirty to send down Tim Elko at this point. Because, like, you call him up. He's done everything. Again, he's done everything he needs to prove in Charlotte. And while he's not hitting that well, and I am not convinced that he's going to be a star, I feel like at the bare minimum, you got to give him a chance. You got to give him an extended look. Because what you don't want is the uncertainty. Like, so if he's bad and he's bad for over 100 at-bats in an extended period of time, and you've got multiple months, and you're like, all right, look, this dude just strikes out too much. The power ain't worth it. Juice ain't worth the squeeze. We tried. It is what it is. But what you don't want is the uncertainty coming into next season. Well, like, we still don't know what we have with Daniel Polka. No, you find out what you have with Tim Elko. I almost said Daniel Polka. He kind of reminds me of Daniel Polka. Find out what you have with Tim Elko this year. All right, like, so I would be upset if they sent him down. But that leaves you, like, what do we do with Vaughn? Do you keep the 2 first basemen on the roster, and then you got to find somewhere else to DFA potentially? I I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I don't think the White Sox DFA him. I'd be very surprised if they do. But at like some point, it's been like, hey, we've tried this experiment for so many years. And honestly, I think Elko's a little bit of a better first baseman. He's a lot taller, so like he's got a longer reach. So there's some of these close plays that he can get to. He made a nice diving play the other day. Like I think he's a better defensive first baseman. It's close. It's tough to say, but like early, I think he's a slightly better defensive first baseman. Vaughn has gotten some bad luck this year, but a lot of that's just because he just pounds the ball into the ground. Like these guys are able to make catches off him because he's just hitting line drives and ground balls. There's not a whole lot of, we got to see more home runs from Vaughn. Now, there's been a couple more RBIs. Like Vaughn's a good run producer still. It's frustrating at times the amount of double plays he'll ground into in clutch opportunities, but as much as I've defended Vaughn, it's almost gotten to the point like, do they DFA him mid-season? Do they try and trade him? Like, I don't think anyone would want him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Vaughn gets the boot. We'll see. I mean, we'll see, man. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I think Palacios, though, is a DFA candidate. I think they keep Lee because he's got that one option. You take him to AAA Charlotte until they can at least try and trade Tyson at the deadline. Even if they don't, hang on to him. Capra, I think he's gone. I mean, it's clear they didn't really. I don't even know why they signed him, if I'm being honest. It was an odd fit on that roster. But yeah, I think if the White Sox were smart, it's going to be tough. I mean, it would be a tough decision to DFA Vaughn because, like, it's not like Elko is hitting significantly better than Vaughn right now. But I think it would get to the point like, hey, we got to find out what we have. Like, Vaughn, you got no part of our future, right? Like, it's done. It's done. This relationship's over after this year. Elko, you could be. Well, let's find out. Let's date a while. Let's find out if this relationship's going to work. So, and if what you got to do is because you're not taking Tauchman's spot, I think Tauchman and Slater provide more value, and Benintendi provide more value than Andrew Vaughn on this roster at this point. At least they could have some potential trade value if they leave. Or Vaughn really doesn't. What's Vaughn doing for it if he stays in the team the rest of the year? And mind you, I'm a big Vaughn defender. I said Vaughn was probably going to lead the team in home runs and RBIs this year. So, I mean, we'll see. But at this point, it's looking like the way things are shaping up. And even the way Venable's been playing the two, I don't know, man. Vaughn might not be in a White Sox uniform at the end of the season. By the end of the season, we'll see. We will see. I think that's going to be very interesting. But excited to see what they do with that. So that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week.